Hello, everybody. Welcome to Self-Evident Podcast. It's podcast number 55. You got Massey and Dan. Wow, this looks like a different face. Obviously, Mike is not here. He's actually in the studio, but he is behind the cameras because, well, we need to pray for Mike because he just doesn't think he's good looking enough to be in front of the cameras. I mean, can't blame him. I'm totally kidding. No, Mike, we're going to... Yeah.
See you guys. Have a good night.
I'm kidding, man. Mike is awesome. He's just, this is Dan, one of our dear friends. And what we're going to do is we're going to interview Dan tonight. And the reason is because we love one thing in the podcast that we do, I think, try to highlight as much as possible is we see all the ills going on in society, Dan. We see a lot of things happening with current politics, whether it's political, church-wide, whatever. We point out a lot of issues, and we love to, number one, bring hope, but we love to bring redemption. And so this is going to be an interview on redemption and how that all works. And not only that, but we have Dan, who's he was a former military veteran, definitely has a story of his own. We kind of love people that have a story, but that can actually just attribute all that to the Lord and like how he kept them. And so, everybody, welcome Dan to the show.
Good to see you.
Dan is a regular listener of Self-Evident Podcast. What I love about Dan is he doesn't always agree with our points, which I absolutely love because what it does is it challenges us to know the truth. It challenges us to dig a little more, do a little more research. Not that he's always right either, but the fact is that we're challenging one another. So, Dan, I got a ton of questions for you, bud.
All right.
And as we're sitting here drinking our cups of coffee, we are going to get into this interview right away with, man, where are you from? Don't say the city, just say the state. Where are you from?
I was born in California, but I'm from Idaho.
Man, California? Where were you from in Cali?
Santa Rosa.
No kidding.
Yeah.
What brought you to what? How did you end up, what? Explain.
What brought me to Idaho was a drive-by shooting a block from my, what used to be upper middle class home. And that pretty much...
Couldn't handle the pressure, huh?
Folks were like, nah, that's it. We're out of here.
Kidding.
It's not my fault the cops were looking for me after that. I thought I was pretty clean. I was 11. No. Actually, funny thing, first time I ever had a gun pointed at me, I was playing in my front yard with my G.I. Joes.
No
I
kidding.
think I was 7 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. My mom got in a Subaru and ran him down, got his license plate and called the cops.
Wow, no
which,
kidding.
did a great deal because they showed up and basically said, oh, there's nothing we can do. We know this guy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So growing up for you, what was it like? What was the... Because I'm going to build into this. So what was it like growing up? Single family home, full family home?
No, traditional family home, Christian, very old school rules Christian home.
Yeah.
Basically, you got to follow the rules or,
You're destined to hell?
You're not, yeah, pretty much. And both my parents are children of alcoholics. So the rules changed based on their mood.
Right.
Primarily my father. And, he did the best he could with what he had.
Sure.
But there was a lot of hellfire and brimstone if you don't do exactly what I say. And actually, I got old enough to tell him some things once, and about last year, he said, God wants you to do this. And I looked at him and said, it must be nice to have God want everything that you want. And that's the last time he mentioned it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think the parents that we have are doing the best they can. One thing I'm learning about my kids, it's that, and I'm looking at Mike because he's got a little 2.5. He's 3 now. 2.5? Almost 3, man. Jeepers. Just yesterday he was born, But as I get older, I'm looking at my folks, and I think a lot of you guys can attest to this too. You know how you're always like, man, I'm never going to do what my parents did to me. I'm never going to be as heavy-handed. I'm never going to be as strict. Why couldn't they give me more and all these other things? And you end up realizing that, man, if you're not careful, your kid will run your life. You know what I mean? So I can understand why rules were important to them. I mean, because if they continue, let's be real. When you grow up as an alcoholic or you grow up with like an addict for like my dad, before he got saved was an addict on drinking and smoking, so he was very much and very, very temperamental. Pops was, now he's cool. His only temper is laughter, but right. He's just crazy. He's always laughing, but you realize that like over time, you're like, man, my kids will run this household if I don't step up and do something, if I don't have the right, it's scary out there, especially nowadays, man, for kids. when they can get their hands on anything, you know, I mean, let's be real, right? Pornography, it's at the tip of a phone now, you know?
It's like terrifying.
Terrifying.
Okay. I was born 1980. Okay. I'm not that old. I feel a lot older than I am, but
Bro, you're 40.
you know, I'm almost 40.
Face it, you're 40.
Almost. Not there yet.
Okay.
You know, you go for pornography, you actually had to go looking. You had to track it down. You had to find it. You had to steal Victoria's Secret from your dad, who stole it from your mom, and hope that nobody noticed. Now, it's every phone.
It is.
Every phone, and there's no guards. I think that is the number one, like, assault on our children right now.
Yeah.
And it's not just men. Everybody thinks boys have problems with pornography. Women are having a problem with pornography.
Dude,
that's been
huge.
underreported.
It's on the rise right now.
And it is on the rise, and they're gearing it towards them.
Mm-hmm. If you think about it, too, because it's like now placating to, let's just go with the tangent for a minute. It's placating on fantasies. Like they're just making fantasies out of nothing now. You know what I mean? Like everything is a fantasy. Everything is, I can't explain it because when I was addicted to it, you know, for that 2 years or whatever it was just everywhere. Like I knew when to do it, how to hide it. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's crazy how.
It's incredibly dangerous because it completely destroys your perception of what a reality in regards to relationships, in regards to women, in regards to how you should relate to them.
That's exactly right.
And if you're not careful, you can take that into reality.
That's right.
And then you get to a point where it doesn't match your fantasy.
Yeah, unneeded expectations.
And you can't have a meaningful relationship.
Exactly.
Because they're never going to meet that expectation. It's not possible.
That's right.
It's not physically possible, not humanly possible. And I took it farther than that. I've had a pornography addiction since I was like 12, you know, and had hardcore conviction about it for a lot of my life. It was one of those things where it was like, just take this from me, take this from me, take this from me. And it just would not, I found myself in it again and again and again. And finally, about the time I walked away, because I grew up Christian, and then in my late teens, I started to walk away, and in my early 20s, I put the hammer down on, I know who God is, I know He exists, I want nothing to do with Him.
I get you.
And I was in the Army, and sex and alcohol, man, that's like a lifestyle. I think of the Army as sort of like any military branch. It's sort of like being in college with heavy artillery. You know, everybody, you're tightly compressed, you're tightly wound, you are spooled up, and you are put under tight constraints. And the way to blow off that steam, addiction.
Yeah.
Any form of release. And it really got bad when I was stationed in Germany because legal prostitution.
Yeah. So before we get to that part, like what brought you to go to the military? Like how was your upbringing to your teens? Because I want to hit those things.
Yeah, I'm skipping over a few.
Right, a few years. But it's good. It's good. Don't worry about it. We'll get it back on track.
We moved to Idaho when I was 11 because of a drive-by shooting that happened a block away from our house. And Santa Rosa was a nice town when I was growing up. So that was kind of a jarring change. And we didn't know anybody in Idaho.
Right.
We had vacationed there once. And my mom goes, okay, we're moving to Idaho. And my dad's like, all right. Mm. So we moved up there, and everything as far as the family relationship went downhill from there. Now, I don't necessarily think it would have survived if we'd stayed in California. And there's no point in thinking back and going, what if?
Sure.
But my parents were married 20 years, and they did counseling, and they did everything they felt they had to do to try to keep the marriage going. And then they divorced when I was 17. And I asked them, why'd you stay together 20 years? You know? Early part of my childhood, before my little sister was born, I had 2 kids, 2 parents. I'm the oldest. Before I'm supposed to have memories, my dad used to be physically abusive to my mother. He stopped that right before I was a toddler and went to continue his emotional and mental abuse on the family. And so it was basically 20 years of hell for my mom. And her reasoning for sticking it out was, I wanted to do it for you kids. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's our fault that you put yourself through hell. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, I get what she was trying to say.
But
that's how it came across. It was like, why was, and for a while after the divorce, I knew the divorce was coming. It wasn't a surprise. But at the same time, it was like my whole world fell apart. Even though it was a crappy world, it fell apart. It was what I knew, and I didn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
And for a little while after that, I'd always struggled with depression and suicidal thoughts and cutting. And, I joke, I was a cutter before it was cool. Because these days, emo kids and all that stuff. And, oh, this is cool. I'm like, dude.
Jeepers, dude, is emo kid still a thing, huh?
Oh, okay.
I know what you're saying.
Whatever the little makeup-wearing kids are calling themselves.
So you're born in 80. Yeah. I was born in 81 in January, right? So it's like emo was the thing in the 90s.
You? I thought you were older than me.
No, you're older than me probably by a few months.
It's the black hair. I can see the gray more clearly.
Man, you gonna go there, dude? All right, let's go with you then. Shoot, how'd you get overweight?
Oh man,
I'm kidding, dude.
Man, I'm bordering on
the pot calling the kettle black,
dude,
right?
I saw you and I was like, man, I want to be him.
Yeah, dude, I'm Tubbo, man, and I don't have a problem saying that.
I loved it when Mike called you a fluffy Mexican that he met outside a store in North Dakota. I'm like, fluffy, dude, I need to be fluffy,
dude.
Anyway, yeah, so depression, self-mutilation, which we call cutting, and suicidal tendencies. And the suicidal tendencies, I just gutted my way through for many, many, many years. Didn't go for help.
Isn't it funny Todd brought that up on Sunday?
I went for help when I was 17. I went to the pastor of our church, and he talked to me a bit. And then he said, how old are you? And I said, 17. He's like, I have to tell your parents. And I'm like, man,
Yeah, what do they call that? If he doesn't tell them, it's like you know what I'm saying? It's like a neglect type thing. Then
if it happens,
down here it's Baker acted.
He's liable.
Yeah, that's what it is.
If I actually go home and do it.
Good for him.
It's good for him. He did the right thing, but I think the whole state's approach to suicide and the federal government's approach to suicide and people who have suicidal tendencies is completely wrong. Mm-hmm. Like I was a volunteer youth leader at one point, and we were told if a kid comes to you and says they're suicidal, you have to tell their parents and direct them to a professional. Okay. Do you know how much it takes just to go to somebody you trust and say, I'm suicidal, I think about killing myself on a regular basis? And they're going to tell you, sorry, time out, can't talk to you right now because it's against the law. So I need to direct you to a stranger and have you spill your guts to them.
Which you won't.
That would shut me down in an instant.
Yeah. I'm finding it now, people that trust, like even we had a conversation with two of the office people today about vulnerability. And like, are we truly vulnerable? Even people you trust, are you truly vulnerable to be truthful and honest with each other? And, let alone, like you said, getting the state involved with professionals that, dude, let's be honest here. I mean, what they got through college and all these other things. Like, how depressed could you have been? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what I've been through? Really is the question. You know what I mean?
I'll look at it like this, okay? You don't send a guy who's never seen combat to talk to veterans if you're smart, because the veterans won't tell him crap. Mm-hmm. They won't talk to him. You're lucky if you get a veteran to talk to another veteran. They got to actually know each other.
What was it, 22 a day? 22 vets a day commit suicide?
You got somebody who's suicidal, and you're going to send somebody with a doctorate to talk to him? And what, you think they're going to open up like a can of worms? Shortly after my parents' divorce, my mom tricked me into going to see a psychiatrist because I was totally against psychiatrists, psychologists, anything. I didn't want anything to do with them. So we show up there, and I sat there for an hour, and I didn't say a word for an hour. It was like one-word answers. That was it. And I wouldn't open up to her at all. I disappointed my mom, but I was like, what do you expect? You lied to get me here. You know how I feel about this. And you think it's going to help? I don't think so.
Right.
Anyway, kind of wrapped around the subject there, so.
No, it's good.
No, so they divorced when I was 17. I took it on myself a lot. It was like, my parents have been through hell for 20 years. Why'd they do it? Because I was born. Kind of wish I'd never been born. Saved a lot of people a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I get you.
Dealt with that for a few years. A lot of guilt over just being born. And kind of came through that. My mom met her current husband, and he's a Vietnam veteran, Army Ranger. Really cool guy. Had a lot of the same personality traits as me. Would not open up easily, did not trust easily. And one day he and I just had kind of a heart-to-heart, and I was like, man, this guy's like...
Legit.
Yeah, and he's kind of like me.
That's cool.
And he suggested, because I'm in Idaho, and Idaho's not a year-round work state, basically. I mean, a lot of it shuts down for the winter.
Yeah.
So I was getting laid off every winter. And I gotten laid off. I didn't know what to do. And he said, why don't you go in the Army? Actually, he said, why don't you go in the Navy or the Air Force? And I tried out for the Navy, and I was actually a day away from signing the paperwork. And they changed their regulations to where they wouldn't accept GED. Because I hadn't graduated high school. I took my GED when my folks split. I was like, I'm done with school, man. I'm making money. I can work. And their one requirement was, if you want to quit school, you got to at least test out. So I tested out. So that left me the Army and the Marine Corps. So I get talking to the Army, and they're getting me lined up. And then I figure, I'll just talk to the Marine guy and just see what he says. I walked in. He took one look at me and said, Marines aren't for you, dude. I'm like, all right, you have a good day. You're right. I got no interest in that. So I did... what was it? 4 years, a little change in the Army. Went in when I was 19. Did a tour in Iraq at the end of my enlistment. I got out and didn't really know what to do with myself. It's kind of tough. You get into a branch of the service, and everybody's telling you what to do from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. And then you're left on your own, and you're like, I'm not used to this. Who's going to tell me what to do? So I was a little adrift. And during that time, I started trying to rebuild my relationship with my dad, because it had suffered quite a bit. At one point, I wanted nothing to do with it.
Of course.
And so was working on that. Bounced around for a while, and then I went to school for a little bit and realized I couldn't afford it on just the GI Bill. So I kind of figured, what do you want to do? I was like, okay, well, I'll go get my CDL, because truckers are always needed. And then I'll come back, I'll work it for a year to get the experience to where I'm hireable. And I'll come back to school, and I'll go for diesel tech. And then I've got 2 blue-collar skills that are needed in an up or down economy, because this was 2008 it had happened.
Right.
And I'm seeing guys in their 60s who are in the unemployment office going,
Bro.
Dude, they just fired me. Nobody's going to hire me. They've been working heavy equipment for 30, 40 years, and what are they doing?
Yep. Had no savings, had nothing, man.
Yeah.
I remember that time. That was terrible.
Which scares me, because I'm at almost 40 looking at the same thing. I got no savings. I got no 401k. I got no, retirement. Nobody taught me how to properly spend money and how to not properly spend money.
Truth.
So that's something else that kids need to be taught.
Yeah, it's something that I just started getting into. We talk about it a lot now, savings, and you're actually smart. You actually did and was smart in putting away money. And you're right. Growing up in a Hispanic family, we don't even think, it's not what we were taught. Spend it when you get it,
yep.
Or send it home. Like my family would send, some of my family would send it to back to Mexico and stuff. But just now, this year, being 39, we just started something with, so I'm trying to play catch up.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because, geez, dude, I'm missing from 18 and on, 20 years of my life that I just didn't do it. It just wasn't in the cards. You know what I mean? You're right. You know, so when's the last time you used arithmetic during tax time? You know what I mean? So it's like, I mean, serious. It's these things that's like, man, these kids don't even know the basics sometimes getting out of high school, you know?
Oh, they're being pumped right into a system that encourages going into massive debt for jobs that will not pay it off.
That's exactly right, dude.
It's like, hey, you come out of high school, hey, do some college courses. Oh, yeah, go to college, man. Go to college. We'll pay for it, right? Loans, no big deal. Loans, no big deal. And I fell into that trap. And then they get out, and it's like,
now what?
I got a Bachelor of Arts, man, or political science, or I'm an environmental activist. It's like, okay, how are you going to pay back that $50, $150, $120, $200,000 that's garnering interest every month?
And it's tough to do when you're a doctor or a lawyer. Can you imagine just any other like normal job that pays 60, 70 grand a year?
Yeah.
That's tough, dude. You know? Yeah. Anyways, let's go back to when you were in, you went to the military, you went to the Army.
Yeah.
You were talking about like how it was difficult. You started to get into addictions and things like that. You get out, you're back to trying to build a relationship with your dad, right? Then you go get your CDL. Mm-hmm. During this time, where was God and all that? Was he still on the back burner?
Well,
was he still?
Let's start with when I was 17. I've been going to church, and I was very much in the Holy Spirit, forgiveness, God. And I lived for God. I loved God. God was the one thing that saved me.
Yeah,
literally saved me. Because I was battling suicide almost every day. But God was the one who was getting me through it.
Yeah.
When my folks split, I was just like, you know what?
God takes the hit every time.
He does.
Dude.
He does.
He does.
The thing was, and this is the ironic thing, I held a lot of anger towards my father. I held a lot of anger towards my mother. And one time at church camp when I was like 16, God convicted me. He's like, you gotta let this go.
Yeah.
So I just prayed. I let it go.
Hard to do.
I called up my dad. I said, Dad, I need to apologize. I've held a lot of unforgiveness towards you, a lot of anger, and it was okay. Thanks. Bye. And it took a really ironic twist because when they split, I didn't have an outlet. I was angry.
Sure.
But I'd already forgiven my parents. So it didn't go towards them.
Yep.
It went towards God. Because God, why would you let this happen?
See that? It's a tough thing. Like let's shoot straight, right? God gives us a law. He gives us his word. He gives us all these things to prevent harm. We go off and make decisions. You're the fruit of it, right? You're the fruit of bad decisions.
Yep.
And then he's the one to blame when things don't go right because we didn't obey him in the first place. It's so ironic, school shootings happen. Remember, we've talked about this before. School shootings happen. Friends of mine will call it literal. It happens almost every time. Yeah. Why does God allow this? He's the one who wrote, "Thou shalt not kill." Who didn't obey that? And why is it God's fault that someone didn't obey that?
I mean,
you know what I mean?
I don't know about you. I wasn't built with an off switch on my back to where he can just push that button and
exactly,
I just
dude.
Downgrade. Nope, I have no more violent tendencies.
Dude, we love free will, right?
But we don't like the exercise of it.
That's exactly right. We hate the responsibility of it.
When it goes against our interests.
That's right. When the responsibility has to come on us, we hate free will. We hate the fact that free will exists. Dude, this is good. That's a great topic. I think we got to save that one. Seriously.
I kind of sound like I'm just bashing my folks right now, but they never should have gotten married in the first place. They just shouldn't. Now they did.
Looking back, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Hindsight's always 20/20.
Definitely. And I'm grateful they did because I'm alive. My sister's alive. I have an opportunity every day to wake up and do it right. I don't say I do, but I have the opportunity to, which I'm constantly grateful for. Because every moment I wake up, I go, okay, I can do it right today.
That's right.
Maybe I didn't yesterday, but I can do it right today.
His mercies are new every morning, dude. So it's good stuff.
And they did actually instill a lot of good qualities in me. My dad started me working at 13.
Smart.
And he taught me, you sacrifice for the job, labor, work, work ethic. You start something, you finish it.
That's good.
And it's kind of an old Irish blue collar family. That's where he came from. He came from, 6 kids, Irish, Catholic, and all very, you earn your way. And his way of rebelling against his dad worked for the highway company. So he was a very much company guy. You know, you earn, you put into your retirement, and then you retire, and then everything works that way. What he didn't foresee was he died about a year after he retired, because the men in my family, when they run out of things to do, they run out of things to do. You know, it's almost like they just, why am I getting up? And my dad's 66, somewhere around there, and he's still working.
Good night.
And he won't stop. I know he won't stop. But he was the first one in the family that went out on his own. And he's run his own company since before I was born.
It's crazy, dude.
So you have two ideals, but neither one of them taught me the proper use of money. And my mom taught me, yeah, work is good, but you got to know when to go after something you want just because you want it. And to kind of follow your dreams. And I was always very imaginative when I was a kid, something my dad tried to knock out of me because I'd have my head in the clouds. You know?
Sure.
And I was artistic, and I was a daydreamer, and those were not good qualities to have when you're trying to work, or you're trying to play sports, or you're trying to do anything else.
Disciplined.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you're trying to be disciplined, that's worst.
So he discouraged that, and my mom encouraged it. So that was quite the interesting little combination of voices. You know, coming from each parent. So they got divorced. I went, you know what? I've been living for God all this. Another lie devil likes to throw at us when things don't go our way. I've been doing everything right.
That's right.
And God let this happen to me anyway. And it's not fair. Right. Okay, get over it. Bad stuff happens because people are messed up.
They're sinful,
and the world
dude.
is fallen. And it has nothing God didn't do this to you. And just because you think you did everything right doesn't mean you don't have lessons to learn. And if you pay attention, you'll learn more out of the bad stuff than you will the good stuff.
Truth. I'm finding out two things. Wisdom doesn't come with age.
No.
It comes with learning the lesson.
No.
And the second thing is failures are the seeds to growth. I'm learning this more and more, man. Failures are the seeds to growth. I think, and I'm not encouraging failure. I'm encouraging trying. I'm encouraging moving forward, taking a risk, taking a leap of faith, all these things, which most people won't do because they're afraid to fail. They're afraid to have it spattered in their face. You know, Isaiah, I believe it's 54, says that he will not put you to shame. He won't put you to an open shame. He said, you are my people. I won't put you to a shame. I think it's important to know that, like, dude, he wants you to step out. And, dude, you're going to fail people. You're going to fail. It sometimes happens. We confuse the word fail with fall. Most people, when they disobey, or not disobey, when they fail, they think, oh, my gosh, I must not have been hearing God. I must not have been this. Well, you're equating yourself to, that word fall actually equates to when Satan fell from heaven. So, in other words, he left his place with God, right? Sometimes we take it on ourselves when we fail. It's like, oh, my gosh, it's the end of the world. I can't do it. No, that's not fail. Fail is, dude, okay, I messed up. Let's get back on the horse. Let's move forward. You know what I mean? Because most people, they preach these good messages about not being defined by your failures. But they really are.
Actually, my failures completely define me. If I tried to be defined by my successes, this would be a really short story.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The fact is, I put it like this. You put a fighter in front of me, and I'll ask him how many fights he's lost. And if he says none, I say, you're not a fighter. I mean, military.
You're lucky.
Military,
Bro, look at what happened to Ronda Rousey.
We don't go in unless we know we have overwhelming force, not an even battle.
Yeah.
But in life, you don't have overwhelming force. It's you against whatever you're facing, and you're going to get knocked around a bit, and it's going to happen. So you might as well just brace yourself, prep for it. If you get through it, thank God. If you don't, try again.
Yeah. Do you remember she was, 10, 11, and 0 or something like that? She lost that one fight. She just could not recover.
No.
She just sunk like a rock,
No,
dude.
because she hadn't lost before.
That's exactly it.
She wasn't prepped for it.
She wasn't prepped for it. So to her, you're the baddest woman on the planet, which nobody can disagree. She was crazy. I mean, it was unbelievable to see her fights. But it's like the failure actually teaches you to win.
Well, I'll tell you something else. The younger you are when you question your faith, the more chance you have of coming back.
Ooh, that's good.
The older you are, the harder it is. And I've seen that with family members. I've seen that with friends. They haven't faced something that made them question their faith until their late 20s, early 30s, late 30s. It's harder for them to come back because they had it throws their expectations. And they've lived with those expectations so long that they actually see them as facts. Life is going to go this way.
Yep.
You don't know that.
It's true.
You know?
So let's circle back to this then. So then you're out of the Army, you're back, you're doing your CDL.
Well, let me go back to when I was in the Army, because there's something there that needs to, was a good subject to talk about. I was walking away from God. The Army took it to like times 10. Started drinking heavily as soon as I got in, because that is the military. That is a lifestyle. Pornography was constant. I knew guys who pornography was playing 24/7 on their TV. They'd sleep with it running 24/7. And then other sexual immorality is promoted. There's not even a question. And your sexuality and your manhood is questioned if you would even speak up and say, I don't think this should, this is not going to be a part of my life. And then when I got to Germany with legalized prostitution, I took advantage of that. And I came to realize you start with pornography, you move, it brings you quickly into the rest of it. And what you are doing when you're engaging in even pornography is you are dehumanizing the objects of your desire. They're not human anymore. And if you can dehumanize the object of your desire, then it becomes, I don't care what's getting me to the point I want to get to, as long as I get there. Which explains the perversion of homosexuality and other, I won't name them, but all the other deviances that we are seeing more prevalent in our society, that we are more and more accepting. And we're getting bombarded by pornographic material. And that's just the entrance. That's just the doorway.
Yeah, take it a step further. That's why divorce is prevalent. That's why adultery is prevalent. That's why promiscuity is prevalent.
Yeah.
I think, too, the perversions, sexual deviancy, all these things, it literally is because people now, dude, we can't even value a baby in the womb. You know what I mean? So, if we don't value life at any level, what are people to us? And then you have the hypocrites on the other side, right? Because we're conservative. But on the other side, who are saying, well, a woman has the right and you shouldn't, and the Me Too movements and all these things. It's like, but y'all don't even value each other when you guys are going on the red carpet. Literally everything's hanging out. Y'all don't value each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it goes deep and deep and deep. And that they're the first ones to cry wolf. I shouldn't say wolf. They're the first ones to cry when, something bad happens. It's like, dude, we're trying to prevent this.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite. They show up and they go, it's a woman's prerogative, a woman's right. And you will not objectify me. You will not objectify me. Okay, I won't. But I'm going to wear this, and I'm going to have it all showing, but you better not objectify me. And I'm like, you're objectifying yourself.
Totally.
But it's my fault? Now, granted, I'm responsible for my eyes. I'm responsible for how many times I look. A glance is one thing, and no, don't need to see that. On second look, that's mine. That's on me. But at the same time, they're putting themselves out there as objects and yet taking pride in the fact that they're objects, but then getting angry that they're being objectified. It's total hypocrisy. It's like, respect yourself and other people will respect you. And that's how I see it. You can tell somebody who respects themselves because that respect doesn't just apply to themselves. They respect people around them. So, yeah, it's a tough thing because they're really pushing it. They're pushing, pornography is a doorway and it's everywhere now. And nobody talks about where it leads. And now we've got kids being offered major surgeries to turn them from boy to girl, girl to boy. And we're wondering how we got here.
Yep.
And anybody with half a brain goes, that's a psychological disorder. We need to treat the psychological disorder, talk to the child. But they don't go to that. They go from that straight to, oh, well, let's give you massive surgery,
Let's
completely screw up your mind,
we normalize
and go with it.
Normalize the intent of it, actually, too.
And that's a bullet from a gun. You go for that, there's no coming back. You can't go afterwards and say, oh, I changed my mind. I really wasn't this way. It was a phase. We used to call it phases. Kids had phases. Now we have to make the entire decision of the rest of that child's life based on a phase.
Bro, it's that's a deep subject. I mean, I think more and more, we look at pedophilia, and we've talked about this before briefly, just one of those things that's a sexual deviancy. That if a person touched a 5-year-old or an underage kid, we would be totally all over it, right? But a 5-year-old can make a decision about their sex.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's crazy. It's
Put it
asinine.
another way. What if we made it
stupid.
What if we made it the law that if your child comes to you and says, I'm suicidal, you have to act on it? Because we're about 2 seconds from that. Hey, I want to be a girl. I want to be a boy. Oh, I have to do this. Well, I want to end it. I'm tired of this life. You're 10 years old.
Yeah.
You don't know what you want. We had a girl on my first duty station. She was 13, ended up killing herself. Went through with it. Hung herself in the closet. And sorry if that's too descriptive, but at the time I was kind of we have dark sense of humor. But my first thought was, I wish I could have talked to her.
Right.
Because I would have told her, you have no idea. It gets so much worse. But if you can get through tonight, you can handle the next night. So the point was, yeah, it gets worse. Life gets harder as you get older. But
good.
through the previous hardships, you gain the tools to deal with it and face it.
Yeah, the strength. It makes you stronger. And I'm glad I didn't kill myself when I was 20. I'm glad. I'm so glad, dude. I'm glad I never went through it.
I am too. I'm glad you're here.
Dude, it's like we got 3 kids and a wife, and you know what I mean? I get to live a pretty darn cool life. I get to travel and talk to people and give them hope and stuff. But, imagine all of us who've been depressed. You know what I mean? That you've gone through it. Your wife's gone through it. I'm talking to Mike now. I just look at, man, all those needless deaths. And I'm saying needless respectfully. I'm not saying, oh, wow, how stupid they were. I'm saying it was so needless that, they could have added something to society, that they weren't paid attention to, that they didn't feel love, they didn't feel recognition, all these things. And it's like, man, had they just held on a little longer, to see the light of the day, instead of the, what's that saying? Grass is green on the other side.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't believe that, man. Who waters it the best? We got to water these kids.
I put it this way. The sun shines in the morning.
Dude, all the time.
You might be in the dark at night.
Unless you're in Washington State.
But the morning's coming. True. 2 point.
Super gray.
But I actually, before I even started coming back to the Lord, I was still living for me.
Get back on that track, yeah.
I was living for me. And God put me in 2 positions with 2 different people where I was able to talk them out of suicide. And one was right on it. I mean, she was going to go do it when I saw her. And I was not the perfect witness at that moment. I was actually intoxicated. And God gave me the words to say to her. And I talked her back. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. And the next one was a teenager. And what I talked her into doing was go to bed and see how you feel in the morning. Because that's how I used to get through it. I would know that if I went to bed, I could get some sleep. I'd wake up in the morning and things might look different.
Yeah, clear head.
Yeah. And that's a big one. Because, the Army taught me a really good lesson. Nothing stays the same. Everything always changes. If your life sucks right now, it's not going to stay that way forever. If it's good right now, it's not going to stay that way forever.
Truth.
So you better enjoy the good parts with a chokehold, because it's going to change at some point. and you're going to have to go through a little bit of suck. And don't dwell in it because you're going to get through that too.
Truth.
So, yeah. God started working in my life again.
How old were you?
24. And I'd spent 4 years telling him, I don't want to hear you anymore. Don't talk to me. I don't want to hear it. Because I could, I had a strong conscience. I received the Holy Spirit to my knowledge when I was 13. And that was powerful. And, a strong prayer life and devotional times and all that during my teenage years. But in my early 20s, I was like, I know who God is. I'm not going to deny him, but I want nothing to do with him. Well, towards the end of my enlistment, I started waking up to the fact that what I'm doing isn't working. Mm-hmm. And it was it wasn't like angels sang and came from heaven and there was a booming voice and I was blinded for 24 hours or a week or whatever. It was logical deduction. I hit a brick wall in my personal life and realized that what I was doing was not working. Mm-hmm. So I kind of did a reboot. I looked at my life and went, okay, when was the last time you remember your life working? When I was following God. All right, well, then I guess you should start doing that again. So, okay. I got out of the Army and I quit drinking for 2 years. Just on my own, solid. I realized that the alcohol was a problem, that I had a lot of problems in my life that I hadn't dealt with, and that I'd use the alcohol to push those problems away so that I wouldn't feel them, wouldn't hear them, wouldn't see them. And I knew I couldn't let alcohol be a part of my life until I dealt with those issues. Issues from my parents' divorce, issues from my upbringing, just a lot of stuff. And initially I said, I'm going to stop drinking for a year. I also quit smoking at that time. About 3 months after I quit drinking, I quit smoking because I was a pack-a-day smoker. In case you can't tell from my melodious voice. But I made it a year, and I did another evaluation. I was like, not there yet. So I pushed it out to 2 years. Mm. Now, I definitely improved. But there were new issues to deal with that I hadn't quite dealt with yet. Deployment, PTSD, guilt. And I carried those with me for a while. Not entirely sure that I knew that I had them. I knew I had PTSD. I knew I had panic attacks, things like that. But I just gutted through them as well. And I got back involved in the church, and I felt led the last year I was in service that I should become a youth leader, because I could remember that my youth leader, who's actually a friend of mine today, did a lot of positive work in my life during some very crazy times during my teenage years, my formative years. And I was like, if I can do that for just one other kid, it's worth it.
Fun, yeah.
So I did that for a couple of years. It's challenging when you're serving God because you don't necessarily see the results right away, especially if you're working with youth. You may not know that you affected anybody positively until you're in heaven and God says, you did this. And you go, wait, when did I do that? It's a tough one. You don't necessarily get an immediate.
Yeah, the instant gratification.
Yeah.
I think that's why people don't do it very often, because we love the instant. We love come on, man. We talk about just this pet story for me, man. William Wilberforce, 40 years, of his life spent to stop slavery. And, it wasn't the instant gratification. I think he went in there thinking, man, if I can just change their hearts, man, if I can just get them to see how evil this is, they're going to change. And it took time, and a lot of time. And still people were against him, for doing this. I think it's one of those things. It's tough to serve God and do something because and to do it knowing you won't be noticed doing it.
Well, God talks about those who believed and did not see.
That's right.
And how blessed they are. How many people in the first part of the Bible followed God and didn't see anything?
Couldn't even see his face. They couldn't behold his glory.
Couldn't get the Holy Spirit.
That's right.
We got the Holy Spirit now, and we still have trouble following God. It's in us every day. We got the map and the guide every day saying, this direction.
Yeah.
I like that cliff. I want to go check that out.
Yeah, which is ironic. No, and
they didn't. They just had the Testament, the Old Testament. That was it. These are the rules.
Which they didn't even have that. The Old Testament guys.
A lot of them didn't even have that.
They didn't even have that. They were just following God.
They just had God.
That's right. That's right. And there's a lot to that story, or to that the whole history is that we do have the Holy Spirit, which is why we can't make excuses, man. I mean, I think there's no other way to say it that, again, failure happens, but my striving is to know Him. You know, what is it Paul said? I want to know Him in the power of His resurrection. There's something about the power of God, resurrected inside of you that overcomes fear. It overcomes, destruction, overcomes hatred and anger and malice and wrath. If there's no fruit of the Spirit, you got to question, like what kind of walk you're walking. That's really it. And it's a challenge to all of us, especially as Christians. I never want to say that we have it down pat, but I do think, Jesus was right when He said, greater work shall you do, than I did. We were just talking about that sermon on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Talks about, it was on demons, but it was basically how the Bible talks about it. And dude, it was nothing for them to cast them out. It was nothing for them to walk through these trials. It was nothing for them to walk into a city knowing they would be persecuted. Nothing for a Peter or a Paul to be persecuted. And they just did it because it was like, you know what? My life's Christ anyways. I'm hidden with Him.
Paul's in prison being tortured probably on a daily basis in the worst possible conditions you can think of. And he's getting guards to convert.
That's right.
Because he is in joy. Joy.
Through the trial. James 1, yeah.
And anyway, my walk away from God taught me something very important. My salvation is not based on anything I do or don't do. It's based on a decision I already made. And when you make it that simple, it's awesome. Because somebody who's trying to sell you a bill of goods always talks too much. But salvation, the difference between the saved and the unsaved is the saved said yes to a gift that is open to the world. It's open to everybody. And thank God I can't earn it, because I wouldn't be able to, even if He said these are the standards. I just wouldn't. And what happened was, I read the scripture that said He forgives all sins. Because I was trying to figure out if I had gone to the point where God could not forgive me anymore. And as soon as I read that scripture, I felt the Holy Spirit move. And it was a light bulb. If the Holy Spirit's still within me and I still feel it, then I'm still saved. So if I'm still saved, anybody can still be saved, because I've done just about everything I could think to do that was against my original moral code.
But you know what's funny is most people have done everything that's against their moral code. They think, man, I haven't killed nobody. Have you hated somebody? That's murder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, we think we haven't done the unthinkable.
And they look at it the wrong way. They say, oh, well, because of that, then I'm not good enough. Well, my thoughts? You're telling me my thoughts are sin? Then I can't get into heaven. Well, of course you can. Just say, Lord, I'm a sinner. Would you forgive me?
Yeah, I accept the what you've done for me.
Exactly.
I think too, it's this. The more I study salvation, it's a simple thing, but it also is this. Like it's what Paul said. I'm not my own anymore. I'm bought with a price.
Yeah.
I want to serve Him.
Yeah.
My desires are different. My tendencies are still there sometimes. I think old things still try to come up, but my desire is, Lord, I'm striving against this now. I'm not just giving into it. I'm striving. And Lord, I don't want to go, I want to be perfected in who You are. I don't want this old life anymore, because what's the difference between me and the world? I want to know that I have a God that can save me and redeem me from my sin.
Yeah.
The one that can take away future sins, past sins, present sins, but also remove those things from me. Like that, I don't have that desire anymore. I just want him. That's all I want. All this here, it's not even going to matter. You know, like the ministries and all that. Dude, it was very poignant what Christ said. People will know that you're my children by the love that you have for one another.
Yeah.
Not by the ministry we had, not by the podcast, not by which I love. You're fantastic at it. You know, I love having ministry. I love preaching, but so what, dude, if we didn't love one another? So what if I didn't love God with everything I had? What's the point? You know, I think that's the hope we can give people. It's like, of course, you just said it. Of course you can't be saved. Of course.
Well, what frustrates me is a lot of even churches go, basically it's hell insurance. You need to come to Christ and be saved. Well, of course you do. I agree with that. That's the starting point.
That's right.
That's not the end, And after you are saved, then you realize the amount how much you don't deserve it. How
exactly
you
right.
couldn't have earned it. And the gratitude from that gift is what prompts you to align yourself with God. It's like in some cultures, if somebody saved someone else's life, that person who was saved, their life was now theirs.
That's right.
So they would follow them and do whatever. They were basically submitted themselves to the will of that person. So if you take that and you go, okay, Jesus died on the cross,
right,
was tortured, and then died for me, specifically me, the world, but specifically me as well. For starters, that means I must be worth something to him. Even if I'm not worth anything to the world or even to myself, because for a long time I had to deal with a feeling of worthlessness. Jesus saw me as worth his life. And I can't even find my own self-worth, but he did.
That's right.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to live for him. Why not? I mean, why not? You can't lose anything. The only thing you're going to lose is all the stuff you were following that tore you to pieces,
That's
that
right.
made you question your own worth, that took you to a place where you had no worth, where you're looking around and seeing darkness and going, how did I get here? It's, and the thing I love is the closer I get to God, the simpler the answers get. And I thought about it. I was like, the Pharisees would go to him and try to ask him intricate, detailed traps of questions, And he, what is the most important law?
Yeah, the command.
He turned it into two. So what did he do? He simplified it. God makes things simple. Follow me. Follow yourself. See what happens.
Yeah, it's all about that love. And dude, because we're at an hour, it's good. We want to thank Dan for coming on the show. One of the things that we always want to get across is every time there's a story of redemption, we want to highlight it, because if God can save, and I'm not saying this in a negative, if God can save you,
he can save anybody.
That's exactly it. I think the more and more I see salvation come through in this light is that there's no prejudice with God. He's going to save whom he saves. And he's the one reaching out to you. He's the one with the open. He says, Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man opens, he said, then I will come unto him. And he will do that. When you're baptized in the Spirit, he makes you a witness of him. And this is something that has life. I don't have purpose because of me and I found Jesus. I have purpose because he put the purpose in me. And you know what? Like you said, what am I losing? I'm losing everything that destroyed me, and I'm gaining everything that gives me life. That's exactly what happens in the Christian walk.
Can I add one more quick thing? I spent 4 years telling God, go away, I don't want you. And when I turned around, he was right there.
That's exactly right.
And I went from that to, thank you, Lord, for not listening to me and giving me what I wanted.
That's exactly
because it was completely messed up.
That's right. And he won't leave you, forsake you. It's funny. He's the one that never leaves. We're the ones that leave him. So when people say, I don't hear from God, he ain't leaving. You got to turn your ear to him. You got to turn your heart to him. So, guys, again, thank you so much for tuning in to Self-Evident Podcast number 55. Go online, theselfevidenttruth.com, theselfevidenttruth.com. Copy some merch, y'all. Support this ministry. Support your boys. We need to get out there more, man. We got the cool hats. The Make America Constitutional again. Guys, we're coming up with some really new stuff. We got some new shirts coming out, some new designs. You should see them around the March time. Once again, our Government versus God curriculum is going to come out in March as well. And then we're doing an extended version of that, hopefully to be released in the fall time, which we're really excited about that because it's going to turn more of it into a curriculum type Bible study type homeschool curriculum if you want that. So again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you guys next week.